dignity, and help us all to become communities of belonging and justice for all. So my PhD focused on the social inclusion of children with disabilities and how they, as being people on the periphery of society, need to be more included in all our spaces or have universal access rights to the city and all our spaces. The topic that I get to engage Professor Stefan on is being a learning university, being a learning church, being a learning community. How can we as learners at this intersection of all these stakeholders become better at becoming communities of belonging and justice for all? And so I want to go first and kickstart with Professor De Beer's book, Clown of the City. And Professor De Beer, you discussed the clown as a metaphor for someone who disrupts injustice. But from this position of this clown who walks in the shoes of the marginalized, what do you think that we, as the faith-based leaders in South African cities, need to see differently today, perhaps through the eyes of this clown figure? If we look at the metaphor of the clown, you use the clown as the eyes and the shoes of the city, disrupting our ways of seeing or dealing with injustice from the seat of the marginalized. So my question is, what do we as faith-based leaders in South Africa need to see differently today through the eyes of this clown?
Okay. You think of a clown, what do you think of? What are the traits of a clown? Joker?
I'll turn that over to we visualize the traits of the clown.
Sorry, I'm asking the group. I'm asking the group here, Shame. Just shout it out.
Somewhat creepy.
Somewhat creepy. Okay, so there's the bad. Clowns have a bad rap as well. What else? What is a clown's function? Entertainment? Scarecrow. Okay. Make people laugh. Speak true words in jest. Remember, the clown is also the jester, who and the jester had the right. So when I think of clown, I think of the jester, the one who had was close, who was working in the court of the emperor or the king, but had the right to, in a playful and almost satirical way, tell truth to power. In a sense, people like Zapiro and these guys, to me, are like clowns as well. They use satire and humor to speak truth. But Henry Nouwen, the Catholic priest, spoke of clown in a different way. He says, in the circus, we all want to be the lion tamers and the trapeze artists. You know, we want to be spectacular. In ministry as well, we want to do spectacular things. But he says, actually, we're just clowns. We're stumbling in rather feebly on the best of days. And so, I don't know, Charmaine. It is about the church, I think, we must take ourselves very seriously, and we must not take ourselves too seriously. We are the people of the cross. We are this messy little community that seldom have it together, that have been saved by grace only, that are called to bring laughter in a sad world. But at the same time, the clown for me is also to cry out about that which makes the world to be sad. So it is, Harvey Cox, who wrote the book Feast of Fools. which really put me on the theme of clowns. Said we lack in the city and in the church, he said we lack two things. We lack festivity and we lack fantasy. We're not able to celebrate and to imagine. And then he speaks about hope, and he says laughter is the last weapon of hope. So when we talk about justice and being prophetic, it's very serious. One of the things I like about Ndufuna Ukwazi is some of the things they do that was not so serious. You know, they had a breakfast in front of Brett Heron's home when he was still the MMC for housing. And they had it's disarming. So the clown is also disarming. It's like a mirror. Oh, I actually look like that. Oh, actually we look like that. Actually we're complicit. So those are some of the things, Charmaine. It's this playful protest, it's this truth-telling, it's the stumbling into places where we shouldn't. You know, can we stumble into city council meetings where we shouldn't and disrupt and call out the state of the city address? It is the person with mental health issues on a Sunday morning when I preached in a church, in my church back then, the oldest church in Pretoria. And right in the middle of the sermon, with this very, struggle church, in the middle of the sermon, a homeless guy with mental health issues came in and made noise. And of course, the first thing people want to do is to get this guy out so that we can carry on with the service. He was the clown and the prophet and the sermon for me that Sunday. I think God knew my sermon was bad on that day. and he sent this guy to ask, what are you about? What is this church about? Do we have space for people like this man? For me, that's the clown. So it's not nicely with a little stricky, a little ribbon on top. It's messy, it's being authentic, it's being who we are, and that we don't get it right. And we're on this journey with Jesus, which is fun, it's adventurous, but it's also messy, and sometimes there's good news, and sometimes there's surprise, and sometimes there's joy, and sometimes there's miracle. But sometimes we have to exorcise bad power, and sometimes we have to speak truth. It's all of that.
Thank you, Stefan. I was hoping to tease out more depth to what that clown means in your writings, and you have definitely brought that to the table. As we look at one of the issues you mentioned on mental illness, I've got a question here from an online community. Hello from Open Doors Africa and also Renewal Fellowship Church in Joburg. She asks this. She says you mentioned mental health as one of the illnesses that the church or Christian organization does not fully grasp. Where should one begin there? What courses can theological institutions put the layman to?
Sure. Thank you. That's a great question. Just before I answer that question, if you want to read about Jesus and the clown, there's an Indonesian guy by the name of Joas Adiprasetya. We discovered each other, and I mean, in Indonesia they have a certain clown figure, and because Indonesia is so diverse, faith-wise, he has this very interesting. So he speaks of Jesus as the clown, and that the Christian community must be a community of clowns. But he writes beautifully about that. So if you're interested, you can read more about Joas. The issue of mental health, yeah, and there's a whole spectrum, I suppose, eh? I mean, I have this little thing to say, in/sanity is a thin line. Because we all kind of, but we're all vulnerable, we're all frail. A traumatic experience can set us off in a certain direction. It's a real thing. So there's those who are diagnosed and often misdiagnosed, because I mean, I have people very close to me who has been misdiagnosed hundreds of times until they had to live down the rubbish of the diagnosis that they were having to carry. And then there are sometimes more accurate. I'm not a mental health expert, I'm waffling now. But the point is, all of us have experiences with these things. Some of us have gone through it. Some of us had to be on tablets for a while, and so forth. So it's in the church. The church has mental health illnesses. And again, I mean, what was the problem of Mary Magdalene? She was not a prostitute. That's a myth. But she had 7 demons exorcised from her. In those times, was she demon-possessed? Or did she live with mental health issues? I don't know what it was. It's speculating. But what was her issues? And then she becomes the first evangelist after the resurrection. When the men fled, she and the other Mary stayed with Jesus, and she became the witness. So can we pretend for a moment maybe it was mental health issues that she dealt with? But how do we create that? How do we create safe spaces in the church for that? How do we speak about it? How do we make people be safe? How do we people feel safe to say it? And can we create special spaces for that? So on the Mamelodi campus of our university, maybe I'll have time to say something about that later, Charmaine. But it's opposite about 100,000+ people living in informal settlements in the new developments of Mamelodi. We inherited this campus. And the psychology clinic of our university it's closed now, unfortunately. We hope it can be revived. Had a clinic, a psychology clinic, and before they knew it, they only saw children. And they saw 60 children a month who were victims of rape. And these were just children who were reported, who came through the system, who were sent and referred. I mean, there's probably many more. Now, of course, so there's mental health in terms of schizophrenia and bipolar and all the rest, but there's also the trauma that goes with this, with sexual violence. There's the trauma of working in organizations where you don't have money for tomorrow and your mental health gets affected. We deal with power every day and the abuse of power, even by Christian leaders. So I'm not sure I answer it, except to say we have to speak about it, and the red flag that was raised should be raised in our midst to say, how do we speak about it? And are there safe spaces for it? Are there places where people can go to? Do we have healing centers in our churches? Small churches, big churches, places where people can just be safe. It was interesting to watch Mamdani's campaign in the last, who was he in the final weeks? Who was he campaigning against? Can you remember? Como. I was very surprised to hear how homelessness was up front in that last, because in New York you can be on any train or subway and there is a homeless person with mental health issues on the train with you. And it was very much in this campaign, speeches and debates, the last campaign that they had. Now, we deal with that as well in South Africa. How many street-based people are street-based because of mental health issues or develop mental health issues by being on the streets for long? And how do we deal with that? And how do our churches deal with that? And are there residential spaces for that? Because sometimes if you think of homelessness and shelters, you almost have to be healed first before you can enter the shelter. You must prove yourself before you can enter the shelter. Or you must prove yourself once you're in the shelter before you can get to secure housing, which in my mind is sometimes just treating people like children and undignified. And we have to find better ways. So I'm now speaking in circles. But we have to find better ways. And we need people like sorry, I missed your name, to be champions and advocates for this specific issue. And make us uncomfortable until we deal with it.
Thank you, Stefan, for addressing Halkeo and the rest of us on such an important and prevalent matter. And I want to go to another statement you made where you described friendship and solidarity with the marginalized. I think we need you to unpack that for us. what can church leaders and theological educators learn from grassroots communities such as social movements?
What can churches and theological educators learn?
From grassroots communities, such as
Social movements.
Okay.
We start with tackling friendship and solidarity with the marginalized, and perhaps we can learn from social movements,
Yeah.
which I know you write on and research on.
Okay, those are big questions. Maybe just to finish off on the previous one, there is a community that's very close to my heart that was started in the movement I was a part of, called the Gilead Community House, which was, we realized that there were, the policy around mental health in South Africa is favoring deinstitutionalization. So people are placed back in communities, but often people don't have communities to be placed back into. They don't have families that are accepting of them, or they have burnt all their bridges, or they come from deep rural places with no access to psychiatric care or access to medicine, and then they choose to be homeless. So just to finish that previous one off, so that community was created a couple of years ago, and it's just a wonderful community and a space where people can be themselves, sometimes move from there, sometimes recreate connections with their families, or sometimes find long-term housing where they can just be safe. Now, I link that to your last question, because a space like that, if we are willing to be listening, you don't have social work here. I don't know who's social workers in the room or online, so I'll speak carefully. But I always have, I'm surrounded by social workers, and sometimes they get angry at me. But if we do social work or any care as this bureaucratic thing where a person becomes a number, I think it is just contrary to what the Christian community is called to. Jesus said, I no longer call you servants, I call you my friends. So for me, it comes from there. So if you have a Gilead community, is it just a community where we tick the boxes to funders to say we've seen 20 people this month and here's the report? Or is it a place where Koos and Lebo and whoever become my friends that help me understand the realities of what they have to face every day in a better way? I had a friend like that, Jack Cooper. He was this big guy from Grassroots who landed in Pretoria. He died about 3 years ago. And he just became this amazing person that helped me understand what mental health and homelessness meant. He became an advocate. He helped create shelter. And then he decided to stay in the shelter, and he also decided to never move out of the shelter. He made the rules. He was an anarchist, and he was proud of it. But I needed people like Jack in my life to change how I preach, how I think, how I read the Bible, how I think about mental health, how I think about service provision, how I think about shelters. Because, you can very academically plan all these things until a guy like Jack comes as the clown who disrupts all of that. It doesn't work like that. This is not a place where you must fix. We're not called to fix people. We cannot fix ourselves even. We want to fix other people. We can simply journey with people. And that's where friendship and solidarity comes. So solidarity is to stand with, to struggle with, to walk with. And sometimes it might even mean we disagree on stuff. Are we then going to write you off because we disagree, or are we still friends and in solidarity? Do we walk the walk for as long as it takes? So what will it look like for the church to be a community of clowns, a community of friends, communities of solidarity? How many churches stand, for example, with, this is now a bit of activism, how many churches, not individuals, but churches stand with Sissy Goolhouse and say to the city, we think this must become formalized into social housing? Or Somerset Hospital for domestic workers in Sea Point. Are churches doing that? Because our friendship and solidarity cannot just be that and then we go home and I still have my comfort. how do I then also gun? What's gun in English? Gun. No. Gun. I want the same for others. I want my friends to also at least have secure tenure. At least have their kids in a school where it's a bit decent. At least be able to have health care. So for me, that's the importance of that, Shalom. It's not transactional, it's friendship. But that kind of disrupts the whole care system and model often.
That makes sense, Stefan. It's a call to redirect us rather than getting overwhelmed by poverty, inequality, violence, migration, unemployment, and then the burnout that follows all that overwhelm. You're redirecting us. It's not about fixing, but about that journey of solidarity, about becoming that community of belonging and justice where dignity is restored. Thank you for unpacking that for us so eloquently and so on the spot. I realize, Anne, that it is our scheduled tea break, and I want to hear if you'd like to open up the floor for one or two questions or comments, or if you'd like to take tea and then start the next session, perhaps with a question or two, reflecting back on this topic before we begin the next topic.
It's quite a difficult type of concept to deal with, especially when you think of churches as well as the universities. My thought only thought about universities in the sense of what we used to say in the struggle days, where universities like University of Western Cape, for instance, were completely seen as pro-poor, pro-oppressed, and therefore will endure things such as the Kairos document that was set here, and with the political formations that were there, will rally students for freedom, of rights that they have to. And also maybe council of churches and like that in those days who were very proactive in mobilizing churches to speak against apartheid and like that. So I think the examples maybe are of those times. I want to say, I'm not sure when we talk about South Africa today, whether you still have got universities who really do stand up and mobilize students towards change, or even churches who will really do as was in the past. I tend to see, maybe I'm wrong, but for me it seems to be we are now more silent. We really do not want to, we are comfortable, according to me. Universities are comfortable. They want to protect what they have, their institutions, so they do not want disruption. But also, I think it's the same with the churches today. Yeah, so I mean, that's really how I was saying. I don't know what Prof would say about it.
Thank you. Yeah. During tea break, Heidi, you were asking about churches. I mean, especially churches with resources, if you want to speak about justice too much, it might affect the salary of the minister. So rather not. The universities are funders. So they can't speak on certain issues because it might affect the funders. But I think one of the important things for us to do is not just to name, for me, John 10 has become my entry into stuff. John 10:10, the thief that's out to kill, steal, and destroy, but the abundant life Jesus came to bring. And I think we can easily just focus on, and I think it's important, we have to discern the thief and name the thief. So that's, I think, one of the most important jobs of theology, is to name the thief. And the thief is our minds also. It's not just corrupt politicians, it's in our minds, our lack of imagination. The thief is the church, the thief is our complicity, the thief is our silence. But we also have to identify life where it is. where there's small units doing amazing things at universities in different, not the university, but there are small disruptives and signs of hope everywhere. There are churches sometimes, not the big names, under the radar, doing incredible things. So I think one of the tasks that we have is almost journalistic theology, that to find those things, to document it, to share it. I think that's very important. And maybe can I just round back and then back to your question of the social movement. So I think social movements have often, I believe social movements have taken the place. I think Jesus smiles upon social movements because they often do what the church is supposed to be doing. And they organize and they speak for justice. And often people in those movements are people of faith, but in their churches they are not understood because they say you politicians and activists. But they are people of faith doing what they do because they are people of faith. So just two quick examples. In our homelessness work, it's important to work with different disciplines. So the question, what can we learn from? Different disciplines, people with lived experience, grassroots people that make a difference in homelessness issues. They are the experts, they are the people with the knowledge. How do we bring that to the table of the academic environment? So that is one thing. But then another example is a housing thing I'm part of that is struggling and at risk. And when it is struggling, all the vultures came out to take it. It's a housing company that was started as a faith-based housing company, has developed assets of about 300 million rand. 2 years ago in October, and I'm just mentioning it to say how the social movements work, the friendships, the solidarity, but also how it can make change. So there was a crooked company that wanted, with some crooked officials of the same people that is owed money, who wanted to buy a 300 million rand company for 78 million rand. That company since are in the newspaper and on TV for their corrupt deals. And it was a tweet from somebody at Ndufuna Okwazi in Cape Town, whom I've never even met in person. He tweeted the minister. In the same week, we got the bishops in Pretoria to write to the minister. And a friend of mine, whom I didn't know the minister, called her and said, remember, you were my mentee in the Christian youth group when you were young. So she got 3 people from very different spaces, to tell her, you have to intervene. And she intervened and blocked that. A few months later, the same housing company wanted to sell the hospice for palliative care, the mental health facility, all the special needs housing. And then Ground Up did an article, but it was people like Anthea Houston from Community Care and other people that we interviewed. And this media campaign blocked that sale. Now I'm mentioning it just to say there's also hope. So the thief is out to kill, steal, and destroy. If we can build long-term friendships and solidarity, maybe the wall comes into play. I'm not saying it's going to work there, but long-term friends and solidarity at the right moments, those things organized and mobilized can actually arrest the thief. I hope you hear what I'm trying to say. It's long-term stuff. Those relationships, some of them is 30-year relationships. We never even see each other. But at that moment, that relationship, because there's sufficient trust, and we see ourselves as a community that belong to each other, we intuitively know we're on the same side. We might be on the same side of faith, sometimes not. Good faith, good will. We want to have what is the best for people who are often screwed over. And some do it because of Jesus, some just do it because of humanity, but we're on the same side. So we have to find those people. And sadly, they're not always in our churches. Because I don't know who's on this call, so I will not say the next sentence. But sometimes the same Christians are the ones that do the injustice. that we have to fight are the thieves. And sometimes it might be us, so we have to the whole time be self-critical to know, in this situation, am I perhaps the thief?
Thank you, Stefan. I think this is a moment to pause and reflect and do introspection, even as faith-based leaders who are leading in this space, dealing with these realities, but also need to take up the mantle of leadership and be disruptors from the bottom, from the position of friendship, so that it doesn't become, again, disempowering when we look at people in our communities as objects of charity or tragedy, but rather see them as co-laborers fighting for justice, and that the kingdom of God, this upside down kingdom, demands justice. So thank you for that. I'm handing back to Annalei to guide us into where we go next.
Yeah, thank you. My question is on the note of friendship and solidarity and getting the church communities and universities trying to create this atmosphere, this possibility. How do we marry the idea of understanding that sin has caused so much problem that whatever we're trying the best, we cannot come to a solution which is complete. That we're trying our best as Christians, making a better life for those people who are less privileged, but also to understand that we cannot, until Christ is glorified, everything will be completely perfect. And then the church or the people in the universities or churches